Okay, everybody. You've taken already one excellent decision today. You came to AI House for this wonderful session. I've been looking forward to it all week. So welcome. My name is Nicole Butner. I'm one of the founding partners at Merentix Capital. We're an early-stage investor based out of Berlin, investing into European founders. I also founded and run an implementation business, so serve Fortune 500 companies across Europe in their journey around AI. And we also co-founded AI House, so I'm always very excited. Now I would start with Alex, introducing Alex. Maybe I start with you. I wanted to actually start with you, but Alex was also crazy enough. Alex Ilic, who's also one of the founders and initiators, actually, of AI House, and is building ecosystems across Europe in AI. He's the founder and CEO of the ETH AI Center. And he's really building startup ecosystems, and he's very enthusiastic about what it means to be AI native. You're an entrepreneur, also a professor. You're really straddling a lot of worlds. So thanks, Alex, for being here. Laura Modiano is head of startups EMEA OpenAI. Laura works closely with founders across Europe to help them scale from local traction to global impact. She has a front row view into go-to-market, AI-first teams, building faster, how funding works, and how the startup ecosystem in Europe has been evolving. You're also, on a side note, you're also an angel investor, if I may say so. We have here also Andrew. I have to say, I'm not sure which title to choose, to be quite honest. Founder of DeepLearning.AI is what I'm going to say here, but everybody here knows you have many roles. And if I dare say so on a personal note, I also wouldn't be sitting here without one of your courses, so thank you for that. Andrew is one of the most influential figures in modern AI, shaping how millions of developers and founders learn and apply AI. He focuses on application layer innovation, fast execution, practical AI systems, turn ideas really into real-world products, but you've also done a lot of research, a lot of many things, so we'll be looking into this. And then we have fabulous Andy Hawk with us, Chief Strategy Officer of Cerebras Systems. And Andy is working at the intersection of AI infrastructure, startups, and large-scale deployment. So also very interesting perspective, with deep experience supporting AI-native companies from early experimentation to global scale. And you really bring also an operator's view onto this. So forgive me, I'm not going to open the floor for Q&A. We have 4 fabulous people here. I'm going to be happy if you can finish all these exciting thoughts you have for us. So 2026, we're talking about a scale at unprecedented speed. Why now? What's the moment in time, right? AI has collapsed. Time to value. What took weeks now takes days. Speed of execution has become the primary competitive advantage. The barrier to entry is low. 2025 was kind of an inflection point with agentic sort of hitting our consciousness.
You know I coined that term, right?
Yeah. The Godfather. I love it. The Godfather. That's kind of neat when you can just do that.
You know? For that.
That's my word.
I did not trademark it. So. No, honestly, walking down the street, I was reflecting. It was like about 2 years ago, I felt, the term AI agents have been around for decades, but there was this new thing coming that I thought a little bit more than 2 years ago, of agents that could do some simple things and be slightly autonomous or fit into multi-step workflows. And I remember Googling the word agentic. People were not using that term on the internet to describe things. I said, I'm going to call this agentic. So I gave a talk at Sequoia where I first used the term agentic. I said, agentic AI, pay attention. And then people started to use it. And then I wrote a letter in the batch, also shared on social media, saying, you know what, this is why we should call it agentic, because there's a range of autonomy. Let's embrace the slightly agentic and the highly agentic things. And then I actually did one thing that I never shared publicly, which is I said at the end of that letter, I think that I'm going to pay more attention to people that use the word agentic because it shows they're in the know. And I think when I did that, then some marketers got a hold of it, go, I'm in the know, I'm going to call it agentic, and wound up slapping that term everywhere. And now when I walk down, the promenade and I see the word agentic on these buildings, I wonder, like, maybe I overdid it.
Well, fantastic. History unfolding.
Just right.
Just right. Yeah. Exactly.
Giving people ambition is a good thing.
I also feel so. So maybe if we time ourselves, sort of, if everyone can build fast, sort of what does it actually take? and what does actually matter now. Maybe Andy, maybe I can go to you because you have a perspective of infrastructure builder and you're also a startup kind of. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, yeah, we had this discussion, right? Series F or I don't know.
Series G.
Series G,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah, I didn't think the fundraising alphabet went that far when I started Cerebras almost 10 years ago. I think you're right. It's a little bit of a different game now, and we are very much a tool builder at heart. Right? We build computer chips and systems that allow people to train models in days or weeks rather than weeks or months, and enable, for example, agentic workflows that can execute in real time or in practical time. And so I think to your question, right, what do builders focus on today in a world where you have the right resources, the right tools? I think I come back to my background as a product person and as a researcher. I think you build for end user value, and you start from that end user application and work backwards. And at least what we see at Cerebras, I think, is the envelope of those end user applications that demand particularly high-speed inference is growing rapidly, right? It's okay for a simple language chatbot maybe to be a little bit latent and pause for a second before it answers. But in a world of voice assistants, in a world of reasoning models, in a world of agentic flows, right, you actually need a compute volume that looks a little bit more like this and a little bit less like a traditional general purpose chip that might have been built for other work. And it's that really, I think, that we're building for, and you, that we're really building for when we think about AI infrastructure of the next generation.
Fantastic. Maybe this is a good bridge. I mean, just recently, for those of you, you probably all already know, you just recently announced a big partnership also with OpenAI. I believe 750 megawatts.
700, yeah, it brings you back to the future. Right?
Exactly.
This is like, yeah, we're in the range, we're close to gigawatts of power. And yeah, it's a massive partnership, and we're thrilled.
Fantastic. So maybe Laura, you can give us some perspective on what time, like what moment in time do we find ourselves? And you know the ecosystem very well. Maybe you can share some reflections.
Yeah.
What is different now?
So just setting the scene about the European or Europe, Middle East, and Africa ecosystem of startups. So as you said earlier, my job is to work with investors, founders, developers who are right here, who are building right here in Europe, but who have global ambition and who from day one want to create globally relevant companies that are scaling and are solving problems not just for their local communities, but the big problems that matter everywhere in the world. And what I find incredibly amazing is, again, we have the ambition, we have the technical talent, we have the capabilities, we now have investment that is coming both from European as well as from international funds, continuously focusing on what is happening right here in Europe, and we're seeing that we're truly competing at the global level. So just looking at 2025, in Europe we had 51 unicorns minted compared to 26 the year before. That translates to 22% of all global unicorns minted in 25 were here in Europe compared to 15% the year before. So we're growing. And then you compare that to the US, which in 25 had 129 unicorns minted. So as a share of how many category leading companies are created here in Europe, that is growing. And that level of ambition is not going to slow down. I have staked my career on making sure that people in Europe can be the best in their categories. And that's what we're always also seeing, that investors from Silicon Valley are paying very close attention and are increasingly trying to invest and access these companies. So whether we look at consumer or coding or application building with companies like Lovable, which was one of the fastest growing companies ever, reaching 200 million ARR in a single year, if we want to talk about timescales. Yeah. In image creation, video creation, companies like Synthesia and others are really category leaders within their area, and if not the first, then they're definitely one of the top 1, 2, or 3 within their category. So there's a number of startups that are truly changing what enterprises are doing, as well as how consumers are experiencing AI with our tools and built on top of OpenAI and others by working with us, and they're moving very fast. So from that perspective, I really believe in the ambition of European founders.
Oh, very strong statement. Alex, you're building ecosystems as well, right? A lot of founders come out of ETH AI Center, but you're also interacting with corporates and other, let's say, players in the ecosystem. What are your views on how can this scale, let's say, in adoption and technology? How can also traditional companies basically scale AI quickly?
Yeah, I think like at ETH and together also with EPFL, we realized that it's important, that we can educate the next generation differently. Like we're in the fortunate position, we have, a world-leading supercomputer, 11,000 latest GPUs, which is, 20 to 50 times more than any other universities on the planet. So it's extremely unique. And we believe large-scale AI is not going away. It's a tool in the toolbox. So, of course, scale alone won't solve problems. That's also very clear. But I don't think we will get back and say, OK, small models alone are sufficient. So, and if you have only a few hundred people on the planet who have that know-how, then it's very hard to do. I mean, they're fabulous people at OpenAI and so on, but they're not so mobile. They're not, leaving OpenAI and creating new startups every day or going to other corporates. So what we try to do is we try to work on the supply side of talents and say, we can be a place where you learn hands-on how to build foundation models, because it will be more and more important over the future. So at the moment, I think we're at 5% to 10% of this current wave. So the majority is still to come, and we don't even have really AI native business models, right? So for the internet, everyone understands e-commerce was not possible without the internet, but now we're lacking still the terminology, and I think there's a lot of things to figure out, and this is why many projects are currently failing, because we think in very, very traditional old models. So if and how do we bring this change to companies? I believe we need to put a lot of focus on the young talents. And I think we need to put a lot of focus on the startups that have business models that are aligned with outcomes. It's not enough that you paid by number of tokens generated or workflows executed, because it's not linked to the output that you achieve. And that's something I think where companies need to collaborate. It's very hard to overcome this inertia to transform yourself. So just buying AI products alone won't change your business.
Hope you're all taking notes. Andrew, now that we know how this term agentic AI came about, maybe you can share a little bit with us. What are your thoughts, how this term, or what is filling this term, how this term has come to life over the last year or so? What?
Yeah, maybe I'll share just the number one. I like your remarks about buying AI solutions doesn't transform your business. And the number one frequent most conversation I've had here at Davos with many CEOs is still around AI adoption in businesses. So AI, agentic AI, has promised transformative change. But what we're seeing is that for many businesses, the bottom-up experimentation of let 1,000 flowers bloom, that largely is not working. Tons of experimentation, maybe little incremental efficiency gains, which is nice, but not the transformation that agentic AI and AI has been promising. So actually, my business partner, Kirsty Tan, who's here, and I have been working on AI advisory for large businesses. And this is what we see, which is that bottom-up innovation's strength is the teams closest to the problems often have the ideas for solutions first. But where it often hits a ceiling is businesses often have to do a sequence of multiple steps in order to create value. Take a bank writing loans, right? You have to market the loan, get applications, do the preliminary approval, do the final diligence approval and execution. What some AI teams have done is say, oh, I can use AI to automate loan approval, so instead of having a human spend an hour, I have AI spend 10 minutes, which is great. But if everything else is the same as before, then you get a little efficiency gain, which is nice, but it doesn't transform the business. So what Kirsty and I have found, and how we often speak with CEOs, is to transform the business requires deeper workflow redesign. So in this example, some financial institutions have said, you know what, if AI could do the loan approval, instead of just taking the cost savings, let's build a new product so that instead of the loan applicant needing to wait a week for a human to have an hour to examine the loan application to give preliminary approval, let's build a new product where we'll say, get approved in 10 minutes. And this is a very different product. The reason why this is difficult is because it takes a broader view of the entire sequence of steps needed to create value, to redesign that workflow. And this is hard because you now got to market it differently. Maybe the loan application is going to be digitized more efficiently, route to the AI more efficiently. Then final approval, execution is going to handle larger volume. So it takes redesigning that entire set of steps. And this often means that bottom-up innovation at some point needs to take that broader business or product view rather than a bottom-up technology view, or needs some sort of top-down support or top-down business or product perspective in order to transform the business. So I remain excited that as we work with businesses to transform more workflows, we'll get growth rather than just efficiency gains. And the good news and the bad news is this is hard. I find that those one-size-fits-all consultant reports saying every bank should do this, every health person should do this, I think those are like pretty useless, or they certainly don't give competitive advantage, because from the outside, many banks look the same, insurance companies look the same, agriculture looks the same from the outside, but once you dig even 1 or 2 layers deeper, they're so different with different modes, different resources, different human talent, and so the strategies need to be really custom to the company. So to be hard work, it'll take much longer than any of us think, but doing this work will unlock the growth rather than just the incremental efficiency gains that AI can get us to.
Maybe just to add on that, so one fun exercise, so it's hard, but it can be also exciting because you see things completely differently. And so one thing that we're trying with students and researchers is say, hey, look at the Fortune 500 companies. How would you redesign this company now from scratch? Yeah? And you get totally different answers than if you ask the CEOs that are running these companies today. And I think this is something where in this space is something exciting to be done. And you need to combine this bottom up and so on. So we have, for instance, a startup that does redefining manufacturing optimization. Yeah? So basically, the machine operator can wipe code the optimization. Normally, these are different things, right? And the existing companies tell the startup, you're crazy, yeah, because it's completely separate. Yeah? And I think this is exactly something that gives me a lot of energy, because if we have more people that bring that energy and so on, then we can transform it in a very positive way. Yeah. Because at the moment, the debate is always like, oh, there's a new solution. How much costs can I save? So it's very much on the cost orientation. And we should not forget, if you're going in a new business and your advantage is that you're faster than the human flow today, this advantage is gone tomorrow because the next company moves in, so your benchmark is going to be the AI-based, not the human-based one. Yeah? So you don't have anything really defensible. And if you come from the other side, the value creation, then you have something that sticks longer.
Yeah. And one, I think you mentioned cost. And I agree. One common pattern I've seen is we'll often brainstorm ideas based on cost savings. Humans do this. Let's use AI to do this thing. And then the 2 patterns that I urge you to consider is when AI could do something, the 2 things that often drive growth, not just efficiency gains, is either do it faster, like the loan efficiency, loan making example, or do it 100 times more, right? For example, go down market or drive much bigger volume. So whenever you automate something, in addition to the efficiency gains, ask, is there a place where you do this 100 or 1,000 times more? Or do this 100 times and faster, and what do I need to do to redesign everything around it to drive transformative growth?
Yeah. And I guess
let me take charge again. But I love this. I love that we're bouncing off each other. Laura, maybe you can add some thoughts, because you're working a lot with startups that are building, and I wanted to redirect it a little bit also onto this side of things. Can you maybe share observations, because time to value is something that is kind of on everybody's mind, and there are some startups that are doing this. Maybe you can shed a little bit of light.
So first of all, I entirely agree with Andrew. I think the analogy that I often use is that if you're a startup, very much like Andrew was saying, if you look at all the steps and you're focusing on cost, it's probably not the best thing, because it's like little Legos, and it's not like you're replacing one Lego and putting in a new AI solution. That's more of a feature. You really have to look at the whole sequence and value chain. What you should be impacting is the final outcome. So are you looking at the top line, the bottom line, or a business outcome? So an example on this case would be if you're working in a hospital, for example, and you're saying, how does a patient flow? Where do they come in? How long do they wait? What is their interaction with a nurse? And how do those notes get taken in? What is their interaction with a doctor? And then when do they walk out? What you should care about is, yes, how long did they spend with a nurse and what kind of interaction they had, but really what you care about is not that step, is what is the patient outcome in the end? Are patients healthier and do they have an overall better experience in the hospital? So in that case, if these are all Lego steps, my advice to founders is always put it in a box, shake the box up, see how many Legos you can take out and sort of redo it. And enterprises should work with startups, because as much as an enterprise looks at the problems internally, what startups are doing is obsessively focus on the problem and also walk out of the one enterprise and see how the same problem is also experienced in many other enterprises. So the more you learn, the more you see where the transferable learnings are from different enterprises, what works, what doesn't work, and then you can create a new process, exactly as you were saying, that works better for multiple companies. As you then implement that in one enterprise, whether it is in healthcare or any other industry, then you can continuously learn, continuously iterate and improve, and bring again any kind of additional learnings back to each one of your customers. So the flywheel of improving that process with people who are dedicated to that and not sort of 3 FTs that are trying to scope the problem for 3 months and then some people are moving in and out. This company will always obsessively continue to serve that problem and customers in that. So I always say work with startups, and that's what startups should work on.
Yeah. So maybe just to throw in one more thing is the behavior of people changes as well. So in the healthcare system, I would bet there are a lot of people, I don't have any statistic, that come self-pre-diagnosed now to the hospital and to the doctor.
The experience end-to-end is changing.
This creates also conflict, because now it's not a closed system anymore, and you feel like you get maybe the wrong treatment and so on. So I think there's a lot of customer behavior that also changes significantly. So you cannot just redesign the workflows. You have also need to think that AI is everywhere, right?
Yeah, across all industries. And I think it depends. So I often talk about the 2x2. So within enterprises, you can introduce AI, and I think startups always focus on one, but if we say there's a 2x2, if you think AI can be introduced either to help your own workforce and how you're doing things inside your company, or for your customers and how your customers are interacting with your products or your company. And then it's, are you changing, improving, finding efficiencies in productivity, or are you doing new ways of doing things? So again, to your point, I think it's not just cost and doing things 1,000 times faster. It's also, are you doing things better, different, or are you doing something entirely new that wasn't possible to do before? So if we look at all the agentic coding companies that exist now, and all the assistants and a lot of the things that have actually grown really fast and have found PMF very quickly, we're seeing these crazy ARRs within 3 months, 6 months, et cetera. It is because they're offering new capabilities that just were not possible before. And what I love about this is that actually a lot of these founders are very technical, and they're going back to first principles. As we were saying, they're trying to redesign processes with AI principles as their foundation. So not just replacement. And by the way, I do think there are new problems we can solve and old problems we can solve with AI from first principles. But being able to build something entirely new is expanding the pie and giving capabilities and superpowers to people across the board, across industries, in what it is that they're focusing on.
I think
fantastic. And if you look from I was going to throw it to you, don't worry. So from an infrastructure perspective, because you're right at the frontier of latency and ultra fast inference, like how do you think about technical constraints, and how much are we constrained by these current boundaries, looking at use cases and applications?
Yeah. So first, I just want to sort of encapsulate and reiterate something for all the builders in the room. Speaking as somebody that's been working on deep tech startups for enterprise for more than a decade, more than 2 decades actually. My hair is gray now. I think the advice you're hearing here is correct. That is, focus on value. Think about the entire sort of product or user journey, and then maybe to Laura's point, and also jumping in to respond to your question, think about the right partners. It's hard for startups to engage enterprise. Try being like a 10-person startup and going to a Fortune 10 CXO suite and like making any kind of progress. I'll see you in 2 years. But if you have the right kind of process, if you have the right kind of partners, right, like OpenAI in this ecosystem, if you have compute partners, if you have deep learning partners, if you have extraordinary teams that are helping you build the right resources in the talent pipeline, That's what gives you a competitive advantage as a scrappy startup. You still got to have relentless hustle. You still got to endure the pain. And you're still going to get told no a lot. But I think it's really about that. In terms of the resources, particularly around compute, right? What we see as we engaged startups, particularly over the past year and a half since we launched our inference product and service and our inference cloud. Our CMO, Julie, wherever she is, Julie, are you here? She's in here someplace, or she's out actually doing work, developing a pipeline. But we've generated and partnered with more than 100 startups in the first 6 months of our service. And I think what we learned from that is that what we've built at Cerebras is a fundamentally new tool, right? We are between 10 and 50 times faster than any number of GPUs for generative AI inference. And that is just a fundamentally different tool, right? That is a wheel in the world of squares. And so as we start talking to startups in terms of resources, right? I think getting easy access to the latest and greatest resources, whether those are models or compute, doesn't just change how you build. It changes what you build. In the world of agentic workflows, for example, fundamentally new applications become available to you with ultra-fast inference that would not have been there before. So it's not just making the same products faster, it's fundamentally new industry. And as an example of that, by analogy, right, we know from the entire history of the internet that this is true. Every millisecond of latency matters. When the internet got faster from dial-up to broadband, we didn't just have faster bulletin boards. By the way, raise your hand if you remember bulletin boards. It's okay, you don't have to be ashamed. We didn't just get faster bulletin boards, right? We had search, we have streaming video, we had social. Going faster doesn't just mean the same stuff gets faster. It means new applications, and it means fundamentally new multi-billion to trillion-dollar industries.
Let's dig into this a little bit, this sort of AI native, like how this not changes what you build, but also how you build. Laura, what do you see, like how has this changed value creation in startups? Like how has this changed pricing, go-to-market, and these kind of things?
A couple of things. First of all, I want to say thank you to professors or university-affiliated people because they really, what you both do in Europe and the US is really create the next generation of founders. And I'm incredibly excited by the fact that founders now are more and more technical. So who the CEOs now, I think in the previous generation would have been CTOs. But because we're building very technical companies or solving business problems with technology first, being technical actually really matters. And again, for the Europeans in the audience, we have more technical talent and STEM graduates in Europe than either the US or China. So I'm very excited about what's about to come in Europe. The other thing is that I'm seeing a lot of the startups be technical across every single role. So roles that traditionally were non-technical, like sales, business development, et cetera, need to be very technical now because the panel that you're selling to, the procurement within the enterprise, and I'm sure that's a lot of the work that you're doing with the consulting that you do, actually need to understand the technology. And they need you to speak a technology business language. And on the flip side, talking about partners, you need to be able to work with your partners to actually provide feedback. And I think feedback is extremely important, both to collect it from your customers, and that is what allows you to build fast. I think some of the best startups have an always-on A/B testing. They're shipping very fast. They're having new features come in. They also build a little bit in public. So they're open to telling their customers, there will be stuff that we're going to ship when they're not 100% done. So a smaller audience that we have a strong relationship with are going to be testing things as early as possible. And that relationship of trust and speed actually allows you to then scale a lot faster. But also when you're working with us at OpenAI, if you continuously give us feedback and you're doing evals and you're doing A/B tests and you're saying what features are working how, where the models are performing best or not, and what it is that you want the models to continue to build on, we can also serve those startups faster. So the ones that I see scaling super fast are the ones that are very closely engaging on the tech, continuously saying what they want from us, where they can dig deeper. They're working with our applied AI teams and are pushing that eval process on an ongoing, always-on basis. And they do that with customer feedback on their side. So we're all listening to each other. But again, thank you to the academics who make sure that there is a generation of founders who can do that and who can move at speed.
Fantastic. If we move this back again, Andrew, to what you're seeing in corporates, or what you're seeing like other players scaling AI initiatives, how does this how many AI native corporates are out there right now, in your opinion, or how does that look like? How does that translate into the corporate world?
Well, if we define AI natives as companies that grew up with AI, then there are no large AI native corporates unless you count young startups. But
Bilinguals.
But I think what Laura said about working with technical people, I want to actually double down on that. AI Fund, we really like working with technical founders. We think technical founders can see further into the future. And I know that stereotypically there have been historically a bunch of business people that told the technical people, you don't know this business stuff, blah, blah, blah. But I think, frankly, if you ask me, is it easier for a technical person to learn the business stuff or for a business person to learn the technical stuff? I think we see a lot of technical CEOs succeed. But I'll go even further. Whenever we put out a job ad for pretty much any role at this point, be it a marketer, recruiter, front desk receptionist, we put in there that we would strongly prefer to hire someone that knows how to code. Because it turns out that the marketer that knows how to code is more productive than the marketer that doesn't. My front desk receptionist that knows how to code is actually pretty productive, building custom software for us compared to front desk receptionists that don't know how to code. My best recruiters, they don't read resumes by hand. They write code to help them screen resumes. My CFO, instead of I've seen other CFOs spend weeks shopping around for vendors to pay someone thousands of dollars per month, so in the hope that they will have some software that roughly does what they want. When my CFO needs some workflow customization, she codes it herself. And so I think that get everyone on your team to learn to code. I think with AI-assisted coding, be it Cloud Code, OpenAI Codex, Gemini CLI, I actually use all three of them, a mix of tools. All knowledge workers will be more productive now if they are able to code. And then just one last thing, the digital native question. There is a stereotype that the most productive engineer is a fresh college grad that knows AI. I have not found that to be true. The most productive engineers I know and have the privilege to work with actually have, like 10, 15, 20 years of experience, but are really on top of AI and really know the latest tools. One tier below that is the fresh college grad that knows AI tools. I hire a bunch of those two, really fantastic. One tier below that is experienced engineer that's still coding like it's 2022, right? There are people that have been in a comfortable job, being a full stack developer, and they get paid, they're fine, but they're so much less productive. I personally will never hire an engineer again that does not know how to use AI tools in a really sophisticated way. And then unfortunately, the lowest, least productive tier is the fresh college grad that does not know AI. And I feel, I still have an academic role. I love academia. Academia is a great source of good. We should strongly support academia. And at this moment in time, I worry if many of our academic institutions are failing students because we're still graduating far too many students, preparing them for the jobs of 2022. And at this point, I can't imagine some of the bachelor's degree in computer science graduating and not know what cloud is, right? It's like, what? You have a CS degree? But yet today, there are still universities graduating people with a bachelor's degree in computer science that have never made even one API call to OpenAI or Anthropic or Gemini, and that just feels weird to me. So, but again, love academia, but with a lot of work to modernize the academic system.
I just want to. First of all, I love that hierarchy. I feel like there is a slide with a graphic that is going to be like the next agents. It's going to be Andrew's hierarchy of coding. That was spot on. I just want to add one constructive counterpoint to the technical founder discussion. As a recovering PhD, when I see technical founders, actually a little red flag goes up in my head. Not because I'm worried about the technical depth or their aptitude. What I then wonder is, and coach as an advisor is beyond the technical aspects of the work. The user empathy, the understanding of product, the ability to think big and decompose a problem into bite-sized chunks, and the ability to build an incredible team of humans. So for the founders out there, absolutely supportive of technical degrees and going deep, almost a requirement. And there's just so much incredible talent, particularly in the European market, that's out there. Yeah. Now the differentiation actually becomes, and the thing that I look for is some of those other skills that make somebody an incredible storyteller, an incredible leader, an incredible product builder, not just technologist.
I think things are so much faster now. So again, it's with tools like Codex, people are not like 3 times faster. They're 200 times faster and better. And what is great about if you're building a startup today, you can do it faster and cheaper because models are getting cheaper and cheaper and better. But it also is, so it's not just the speed, it's also that with fewer people, you can do so much more because using the tools means your team has expanded, but agentically. So having the ability to do so many more things and with longer horizon tasks as well, with very low, ultra low latency, means that it is not theoretical. In practice, people can go from idea to generation in days, and those iteration cycles are getting shorter and shorter and better. So it is really an incredible moment in time for founders and for startups, and obviously for investors, if there are any in the room. It's incredible to see. But what I think becomes now extremely important is opinion, point of view, and taste. Because the tools can do an incredible amount of work, but you do have to guide them and point them to what direction you want them to run to. So for me, when I see a really opinionated founder or team that very closely listens to their users and has that iteration cycle because they're working with users, and then they're continuously driving taste, is what gets me most excited. Yeah. So I just want to see a lot more of that.
So I'm totally with you. So I have the impression, kind of knowing some of, let's say, the bigger European companies at least, and some global ones, that there's almost an element of time travel here, right? Because you're talking, rightly so, about very fast product innovation cycle, very, like, basically, you know, many hundred dimensions, sort of faster iterations, and still sort of in the real world, right? When you go into that hospital, when you go into when you have some of these experiences, you kind of feel like you're still living, I don't know, maybe in the 70s or something, right? When you look at IT systems and the systems people, nurses, doctors interact with. So I would love to take some focus on, let's say, time horizons and like building fast, but also building the right things. And what is your view? And I would like to understand on the panel, are we building, I mean, building fast is great, right? As long, and I think that was also very much your point, you're pointing in the right direction and you're guiding this. But how are we feeling about this expectation that all of this is right here, right? It feels like we're all basically building a startup right here as we're sitting here because we could be doing this. And then the timescales we're seeing, right? Like how this trickles down, how this actually, from this epicenter that you live in, how does this widen? So I'd love to hear a bit your thoughts, you know, around funding, around adoption in enterprise and these things, because something is not yet completely aligned on the time horizon perspective.
Yes, so I think like what's really great, you can do old ideas, you can accelerate quite a lot and express yourself also. So we see this also when working with business school students. Before it was like, okay, how can we make sure that they can talk to the technical people? Now both sides can code. So I think that it builds a very good bridge, and then you put it in front of users, you get feedback. But I still think like there's a lot of disruptive behavior changes coming, because we think still about, you know, the attention economy. How can we get more time of a user? And, you know, it had a lot of negative effects, addiction, and, you know, doom scrolling, whatever. If, you know, the agentic flows, you know, continuing and being better and better, then, you know, we're not fighting for the attention of the agent. I think like what we're switching to is we're trying to find the intention of the user. So switch from attention, where we steal time of people, towards finding out what problem does a person actually want to do. And I think like the companies that figure out how can I predict what this person actually wants and needs will create better agentic solutions and better augmenting solutions, because these are the two main things. Where can I automate to the max, and how can I empower people to that? And I think this change is not trivial. Yeah, so I would also be surprised if the advertising industry still continues in the way that it's doing today, because it is attention-based. I try to sell you a product, steal your attention, but ultimately I think it will switch to how can I help a person to solve a problem. Yeah, and I think this is something completely different, and you see that in many, many areas where it's not clear. We're talking about what Cerebras does and so on is fantastic to accelerate the inference side, but at the edge, at the mobile phone, it's still very old-fashioned. So we have not even extended to that. So I think there will be also a big shift by empowering users more, and basically people having their own AIs that need to talk to others as well. And so time scales, I think this is very hard to predict. So I would, and every prediction is false, as you know. So I would say this is something that takes longer if you look in the last cycle. So not 1 year, not 2 years, but behavior change, that's something that's typically in the area of 10 years.
I think just to follow up on your question, and we can come back to funding. I know there's probably a lot of people in the room that are interested about money. But I think the idea of building fast is an interesting one to decompose a little bit. I think building fast isn't actually the process. It's the result of extraordinary teams. And the thing that allows you, and tools, absolutely. And I think the tools that allow successful teams to build great products fast, actually what's happening under the hood is fast iteration. It's fast experimentation.
Yes.
The whole reason why Andrew's experienced engineer that is sort of the best in class, the top of the hierarchy, that knows AI. The reason that is at the top of the hierarchy is because they know what questions to ask. And they know what the answer means when they get it. And they can quickly generate the next hypothesis that a tool like Cerebras with OpenAI then allows you to test quickly. You don't have to believe me. Right, this is one of the great slides that I think's right up there with the slide that I'm imagining from Andrew's hierarchy is from Jeff Dean at Google Brain about 12, 13 years ago that talked about the process of AI-accelerated scientific hypothesis testing, which is basically the idea that if it takes me a week or a month to test an idea, probably I'm not going to test it. If it takes me a couple of days to test an idea, maybe that's okay if I'm in grad school, right? I turn it into a ski weekend in Davos. But if I'm building an AI model to solve cancer, or if I need to get my product to market for a new enterprise demo, I got to move faster than that. And so what we wanted out of AI compute, and what Cerebras wants out of AI compute, is not hypothesis testing in weeks or days or even hours. We want it to be instantaneous. And so I think the thing I would think about if I was trying to build fast is actually how do I build an extraordinary team that knows the problem and then give them the tools and the partnerships to iterate quickly. It's actually about fast hypothesis testing. And even in another domain, just to bring it back to Davos and fun moments, Diplo on stage yesterday, when asked about the power of AI for creative development, he said it's all about iteration, right? What allows him to create great music isn't that it's just born once on the page. It's that he can experiment quickly. And I think that's actually the real power of these tools, and it's the power of trained academic minds and extraordinary engineers, is that we can iterate quickly to create something incredible.
I want to share one suggestion for where to focus your attention, and also maybe what hires to make, which is when hypothesis testing becomes cheap, hypothesis generation becomes the bottleneck. So we see this in the product management bottleneck, which is that if building is really fast, then deciding what to build becomes the bottleneck. I think of startups as often iterating, where you write a bunch of software, take a look at customers, get feedback, see what they think, decide what new software to write, and then take a look at customers again, and you iterate to make the product incrementally better. So building the software has become really fast and really cheap, but it turns out that going to customers to get the feedback, read their facial expressions, decide what to build next, AI has not accelerated that nearly as much. And so I started to see this like a year and a half ago or something, where this really, really experienced product manager would go, give a spec to an engineer, thinking, great, could you do this in a week or whatever? But then we start to see the engineers would increasingly quickly turn it around and say, all right, I'm done. What do you want me to do? And it started stressing out our product managers and our designers because they just couldn't keep the engineers busy. So in a lot of tech companies, we have these engineer to product manager ratios, which we should take with a grain of salt, but companies often have 1 to 4 to 1 to 8 PMs to engineers, because 1 PM can maybe keep 4 to 8 engineers busy. And we start to see this ratio trend down. We start to build teams with 1 PM to 2 engineers, which is really weird at the time. Then we eventually said, you know what, we're going to try 1 PM to 1 engineer, which is like really bizarre, right? But then eventually, we said the only thing faster than a 1 to 1 PM engineer ratio is let's take these 2 people and collapse them into 1 human. And so I find that these days, some of the fastest moving teams are sometimes 1-person teams, which, to your point, are really strong technical engineers that also have the empathy to guard and gather user feedback, the perspective, and those teams can move incredibly fast. The good news and bad news is, historically, we trained up nobody. Well, very few people are trained to have this mix of skills. People tend to specialize. And so this creates a lot of pressure on everyone to upskill. I'm seeing PMs learn to code. I'm seeing engineers learn a little bit of product management. But when and there are a lot more engineers than there are PMs in the world. So there are more engineers learning some product than PMs learning engineering, but both are working. And when you can get this mix of skills, you get incredible velocity.
And I would add just one side to that, like if the generation, if you need to think what to build is one part, but the other part that's also underestimated is the productizing, that you basically not just get one point and say, hey, does this look good, but how can you make sure that really scales? That's another part that's currently still extremely hard and underestimated because many business cases fail. You show a nice demo, but if you're not having the right setup to build up a data mode, to increase the accuracy and the robustness that scales, then you're also failing. So I think this is also something where we see that teams also need to invest more and build up capacities there.
Yeah, actually, that's where the experienced engineers,
exactly, kick in there.
Where's the fresh college grad? You get these prototypes, but their backend's a mess, and it's just No, I love fresh college grads because I love you too. Oh, and just share one thing on the timelines. The other thing is distribution, which has a lot about building great products. Distribution is important too, and then that's another skill set and another huge can of worms. It feels like B2C distribution has become really hard, and I feel like actually one of the really great campaigns that one of our companies, AI fund portfolio companies, has been running in New York has been on Renate Nieborg, European, is a former CEO of Tinder. She's been working on building a new company called Mino that helps, she's targeting men for now, but help men and then women too build relationships in real life rather than on swiping types of dating apps. So over the last few months, running a campaign in New York subways, you actually find this on tons of social media, on image search. We've put up a bunch of banners that say rejection is hot. Because it turns out when you meet people, I don't know any single men or single women in the audience, but it turns out when you try to meet people in real life, you will get rejected. But it's okay. And Mino tries to give people the courage to meet people in real life and sometimes get rejected. So these banners that say rejection is hot, we've been thrilled at the number of kind of social media influencers that stand in front of it and take a picture and share on Instagram or whatever. But I found that storytelling around meeting people in real life, and it's okay, do stuff, get rejected, in a respectful, non-creepy way, right? That type of storytelling and that skill, which Renate Nieborg really has, is important for getting this great products into users' hands as well.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So we've been touching on many aspects of what it takes to build a scaled startup and how to scale really in the age of AI. I would like to direct it again back a little bit to the funding aspect, which we're touching on lightly. But because it's so interesting. Speaking of rejection, exactly. I don't know who's fundraising out there. Exactly. Let's go to fundraising directly.
But rejection is hot. It's also hot because,
Well, if I may, I think what's really interesting is that we're talking about a lot of the applications in enterprise and enterprise AI, but speaking of dating and male loneliness, AI is not just for enterprises, and the opportunities to create more value in the world and in the world around us are very much in AI for science, in the built world. I mean, whenever I go to ETH Zurich, I see so many robotics. It's in construction, it's in education, it's in life science and drug development, in how you manufacture things. So in every step of everything that we have around us and everything that we're experiencing in our lives, there is room for improvement and better experiences, better quality of life, better application, and actual value delivery. So OpenAI, we just announced a partnership with the Gates Foundation for healthcare, where I'm seeing companies that are doing material science research and physics research, and startups that are starting. Actually, I met a founder yesterday in AI House who was doing faster acid discovery and throughput for biotech companies. Like all these things that are meaningfully changing and helping us in the lives that we have are not always going into an enterprise solution, and yet they have a huge level of value that they're creating, and investors are noticing and are investing in these areas as well. And I'm very excited to see the value of AI and the promise of the value of AI being delivered, actually being delivered across the full spectrum of industries and experiences, whether it is to consumer or to enterprise or to government or to healthcare and everything else.
So maybe let me ask a different question, Andy. Maybe you have some thoughts on this. If everything is so fast now, should we expect investors to have a time horizon just of 12 months? Because they say we can create value in 12 months, and that's what I'm going to measure you against. Is that the right approach?
I think the timescales are fundamentally different depending on the industry. So it might sound like a little bit of a cop-out, but I think it depends on a case-by-case basis, right? For my last company and with Cerebras, we were working on very hard, deeply technical hardware, software co-design projects. And something like building a chip or a computer system is not something that has a product delivery in 12 months, at least today, right? It could be in the future with AI-enabled design and manufacturing, but it's not today. It's not to say that an investor can't set a reasonable milestone based on technical progress or product market fit on that time frame. I think that's entirely possible, but I do think it depends on the industry. So I think in the hardware world, you might be talking about years. In the software world, I do think we're seeing much faster, at least time to market, right? With incredible models like OpenAI's, and with access to compute resources like these. At Cerebras, right, we are seeing people iterate and build much faster. And so I think in the software world, in the application layer world, particularly in consumer markets where we can really test on large experimental pools of users quickly, I think we're seeing a lot shorter time horizons between funding rounds. And we're also seeing, I think, larger rounds earlier with smaller teams that can do a lot more than they used to be able to.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'll just add one sentence and then I'll pass it on. Again, I'll go back to, are you focusing on outcomes or operating processes? So is it cost that you're looking at? Is it productivity you're looking at? Or are you truly affecting the outcomes? So just to give an example of a customer I work with in the UK called Fixer AI, they help categorize emails on do you have to respond or not, and then they help you pre-write certain emails to go faster. I don't think anyone was thinking, oh, I need to cut the cost of my email. But if you can be more effective faster, then you have a better outcome because everyone is more productive. So and we're seeing this company within 6 months, they got like multiple millions of ARR. So it's purely software, but it's not cutting the cost. It is just affecting an outcome. And companies that are really focusing on what is the user experience, again, going back to the beginning of Andrew's points, what does the value chain look like? What does the full experience look like? And where am I affecting change? How do we work with technology to bring something delightful to customers? That is what works really, really fast.
And I'm sorry, I have to say one footnote. Very quick. I encourage folks to go into deep hardware projects and into physical world manufacturing and physical AI. I didn't mean in my remark, just because it's got a longer time scale, doesn't mean it's not as valuable or important. It can be scary, but I think that's where we are going to see incredible momentum over the coming years and decades. And I think there's some of the most rewarding problems for me personally to work on. So I just didn't want my previous remarks to be taken as any kind of discouragement and going into crazy decadal scale hardware projects. Get after it.
Andrew, do you have any new word on your mind that, after this discussion, maybe you're walking through Davos, you might bring up in a letter, or are we going to have to wait for that letter?
No, I don't know. No, nothing comes around. But no, I think we're in the golden age of building. We know in economics, when something becomes much cheaper, sure, you do a lot more of it. What has happened in the last year is the cost of building is falling rapidly towards zero. So the rational thing is to just go and build a lot more. So I think just have an idea, build it, test it out in a responsible way. Don't ship bad things that harms people. But there's so many ways to be responsible as well. I hope people go home and just build.
Fantastic. What else can I add to this final statement? You now know why you took the best decision coming here. I can't wait to have this discussion again next year and see what's on our minds 2026. Thank you very much for your attention. Take this with intention out into the world. Come back for more sessions at AI House and build. Thank you.
Thank you.